Hello, everybody. My name is Sandy Lerman, and I want to welcome you to this workshop. It's a 4-day workshop called No More Meltdowns. And if you can hear me, I want you to type in the chat. Type in the chat where you're calling in from. Where are you calling in from? Tell me, are you a parent? Are you a teacher? Are you a professional of some other kind? What brings you to this workshop today? So go ahead and type in the chat. If you just scroll down where it says chat, click on that, and in the chat, go ahead and type that for me. Who do we have here? Looks like we have Whitney and Laurel and David and Sherry. If you guys would all type in the chat if you're a parent or if you're a teacher and what brings you to this workshop. Yay, Dallas, Texas. Chicago, Maryland, Wilmington, Delaware, fantastic. Yes, everybody type in the chat. I know some of you are going to be watching this recording later, so I'll be sending this out to those of you who signed up ahead of time. So if you ever have any questions or anything, you are welcome to email me. I know some of you aren't able to be here live because you're working or you have other responsibilities. So you can always email me, and that's for those of you who are here live too. And my email is just support@wingbuilder.com. I'm going to put that in the chat, support@wingbuilder.com. Make sure I send that to everyone. There you go. And my name is Sandy Lerman, and I'm so glad to welcome you here today. I know some of you are taking time out of a very busy day to be here. So thank you so much for being dedicated, being interested, and really caring about the kids that you serve, whether they are your own children or they're children in your classroom or children that you serve as a social worker. Our kids really need us to understand what their needs are and meet those needs effectively so that we have no more meltdowns. And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 4 days. I'm chunking it down a little bit. Last time I did a similar workshop, we did it all and it took like an hour and a half to get through all of it. It was just a lot to cover in one session. So I've spread it out over 4 days this time. Again, if you can't be here for all 4 days, that's fine. I will send you the recording, hopefully, if the recording works out well. Sometimes we have tech issues, but hopefully that will be just fine. For those of you who are here live, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions live and anything that comes up that you want to talk about. I just want to start off, before we start the PowerPoint and get into all of this, I want to start out and I want to set this intention before we even begin. I want you to know that it is possible to see change in yourself, in your children. It is possible. If you've been told that your child, the challenging child that you're working with is never going to change, this is just the way it is, it's never going to get better, you can tell them that is a bunch of baloney. That is not true. My child, my son, and many of the families that I've worked with, and many of the teachers that I've worked with over the years, my son was one of the most difficult cases. We ended up in the emergency room multiple times. I was calling police multiple times for my own safety. It was very, very aggressive and explosive and dangerous in our home for a really long time. I started using the methods and the techniques I'm going to teach you about over the next 4 days, and I saw change. I saw it happen, but it required for me to have a mindset that change is possible. It required for me to have a mindset that there's a precious child in there. All of this stuff on the outside, all this melting down, all this behavior, all this stuff is coming from a place of fear and trauma and anxiety, regardless of the diagnosis. Okay, so I know some of you are here, depending on where you found out about this from. Some of your children may have been adopted. They may have been diagnosed with anxiety or depression. Some of them may have been diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder or some kind of attachment challenge. Some of you have children who are autistic, who may have been diagnosed with pathological demand avoidance. Some of you have children who have what's called oppositional defiant disorder, intermittent explosive disorder. There's lots and lots of labels and diagnoses for the kinds of behaviors we're going to be talking about this week. But I want you to know that regardless of the label, regardless of the diagnosis, even for the most psychotic kids with mental health challenges, you can see change. Are you going to see it overnight? No. Are you going to see, perfection in the first 2 days that you try this? No. But if you can focus on growth and progress instead of focusing on perfection and really take it step by step, baby steps, you are going to see change. You're going to see improvement, and you're going to be really, really pleased with the results of this. So that's how I want to start off with. I just want you to know that, because I think people come to workshops, they're like, oh, yeah, I've heard this all before. Oh, yeah. I just want you to know it takes a certain mindset. It takes a certain commitment. I call this, with the parents that I coach and teach, I call this Olympic level parenting or Olympic level teaching, because it really takes dedication and courage and a focus on, we're going to see progress. We're not going to work on perfection, but we're going to work on progress. And that's for our kids, but that's also for ourselves, right? So I have a question here. Somebody asked me, how long is the training today? I'm trying to break it down over the week. So I've spread it out a little bit. It used to be like an hour and a half for me to do this training. So I'm hoping that we'll just take about 20 to 30 minutes each day. If we go over with questions, you're welcome to leave if you need to leave early. As I said, I am recording, so I will, hopefully I'll be able to send that out to you. If all goes well with technology. Knock on wood, hopefully that all goes well. But if you need to leave, if you at some point, that's fine, you can just go. But as we're going along, you can type questions in the chat. I may or may not see them depending on whether I'm doing the presentation. I'll try to pop back and forth between the presentation slides and the chat to make sure that I'm addressing those. So I hope this serves you. I really just want this workshop to give you, first of all, to give you hope that change is possible, to give you some practical tools and strategies that you can start using right away. And then for those of you who want to learn more, you want to do a deeper dive, I have some opportunities that I'll share with you at the end of the training. But not everybody's going to want that, so that's fine too. But everybody that's here, I want this to be valuable to you. I want you to get as much out of this as possible. So I'm going to give you a lot of information in the time that we have. Okay. All right. So thank you all for introducing yourselves. Again, I am Sandy Lerman, and I'm going to bring up our keynote again. So we're going to talk about ending explosive episodes at home and school. If you all could just let me know if you can see that. Hold on a second. Let me pull up my chat because it's not cooperating. Here we go. Now I can see you. Yes. Just type yes if you can see the slides. Somebody type that so that I know. Yes, perfect. All right. So we're going to talk about home and school. Most of the examples that I will be giving are from home because I do a lot of parent coaching, a lot of parent training. And of course, I have a son who used to have really, really explosive meltdowns. Sometimes he'll have some difficult days now, but we manage those so much better. We don't have the violence that we used to have. And I'll tell you his story here in a little bit too. So as we talked about before, most of these kids either have developmental trauma, they may have had childhood adversity of some kind, which are called ACEs, anxiety, or some kind of a diagnosis. Some of you have a diagnosis of PTSD, autism, PDA, RAD, ODD, IED, and they may be experiencing explosive or aggressive or even violent episodes, very irritable. They get very angry out of proportion to the problem, right? You gave me the wrong spoon and this is like a 3-hour meltdown, right? It's just out of proportion to what an adult, somebody who has good regulation skills, is able to handle, right? Physical aggression, violence towards the caregivers or maybe the siblings or their classmates. If they don't have siblings at home, sometimes the pets get the brunt of it. Shutdowns and meltdowns whenever they're frustrated. Unsafe behaviors that escalate whenever the caregiver tries to stop them. So you're trying to tell them stop doing what they're doing and it just gets worse. Does that sound like any of the kids that you know? Type yes if that sounds like a child that you know. Yes. Okay. So traditional discipline. I do not use traditional discipline anymore. I used to. I was a classroom teacher for many, many years. And so I had rules on the wall. And if people broke the rules in the classroom, they got in trouble. They'd have some kind of a consequence, or we would try to like earn rewards, stickers, charts, positive behaviors, that kind of thing. I did that for years and it was effective in the short term. But what I found out very quickly with my son was that it just doesn't work with kids who are explosive and aggressive and they have these meltdowns. You cannot use traditional discipline. You got to throw that out the window. And I know some of you may be coming to this and say, well, that's all I got. Like the only thing I have is rewards and consequences. What am I supposed to do about these behaviors? That's what these 4 days are going to be about. I'm very, very excited to share this with you. And I do hope that this is going to be helpful to you. All right. So caregivers are told to be firm and set limits, right? Don't let them get away with tantrums or they'll learn to manipulate you to get their way. That's what we're told, right? That's what I thought too. I found out I was wrong. We give rewards for good behavior, punishment, or consequences for bad behavior. And this is assuming that the child will be motivated to improve their behavior. So the whole premise of rewards and consequences is that the child doesn't want to do it or wants to do it. It's not about them wanting or not wanting to do the behaviors though. And that's the paradigm shift that I'm going to share with you today. Some of you already understand this paradigm shift, but we have people on coming from a lot of different experiences with this. So just understand that we're not going to use that traditional method in the heartstrong method, at least we aren't. Okay. So the goal in traditional discipline is to get the child to comply with adult authority, a big focus on obedience, respect, submission, instead of connection. And even some of the more connected parenting systems focus on correcting principles that imply that the behavior is somehow wrong and needs to be fixed, rather than understanding that all behavior is communication. So we're going to shift our mindset. Remember, I said that we're going to always be thinking about growth and healing and progress, not perfection. We cannot expect our children to be perfect all the time. Can't expect ourselves to be perfect all the time. I'm certainly not a perfect parent. I have good days and bad days, but it's all about seeing those little increments of progress that we're going to focus on, because what we focus on will grow. Okay. So those traditional systems, it's all about short-term compliance. The child makes a mistake and then they lose the reward or they get a consequence. Okay. And then the system backfires. So this is all about perfection. If a child is not perfect, they get in trouble. And I don't know about you, but if my boss at work was breathing down my neck all day long, and every time I made a mistake on something, they would take away my computer, or take away my privileges of having lunch break or whatever, that would make me a little bit upset. So what happens with our kids who have trauma and anxiety and other mental health diagnoses, they get very upset because they're trying their best and they're not doing very well with their behaviors. And then they get in trouble when they make one little mistake. So we got to stop that, because we're not going to see any improvement with that kind of a system. So we end up in this battle of the wills, this tug of war, constant back and forth with the parent trying to get the kid to do what they want them to do, the child trying to get the parent to do what they want to do. And it's this tug of war that's never ending battles, and battles of will and battles of control. And then the child goes, they take them to the counselor, take them to the hospital, whatever ends up happening, depending on how aggressive they are. They get tons of labels. My son, I want to say he probably had I think he had 8 different diagnoses by the time we got through the mental health system in those early years. He was adopted at age 10. So by the time he was 12, it was like a rap sheet, they would print out here are all his diagnoses, and there were a lot of them. Okay. So they get put on lots of medications. And then sometimes the medications make things worse instead of making them better. Now, I'm not anti-medication. I definitely think medication can be helpful for some kids, but some of the medications that our explosive kids get put on make them even more aggressive. And not a lot of psychiatrists really know what to do about that, sadly. Okay. So we're going to talk about that too, but we're not going to get into all the details. I can't give you all the details today, but I will give you more information about how to get more specific into this if you want that. So kind of support. So there's chaos and crisis. The behavior cycles out of control. The aggression becomes more and more dangerous. Parents don't know what to do, or the teacher doesn't know what to do. The therapists have opinions, and then you try what they tell you to do, and that doesn't work. The school, the doctors, everybody has all these ideas on what you need to do as a parent. and you feel judged as a parent because somehow you can't get your kid to behave, right? Anybody have that feeling? Yes. And eventually a lot of the children end up in inpatient treatment or maybe even residential treatment long-term. But then they end up coming home again 6 months later, 9 months later. And then there's a little bit of a honeymoon, but it goes right back into those explosive and aggressive behaviors again. So thousands and thousands of dollars have been spent and the child is back at square one. And it's just exhausting for parents. It's exhausting for teachers when you have a child like this in your classroom. Okay. I don't want you to be exhausted anymore. I know how it feels. I've been in those shoes. It is so frustrating and so exhausting. And if I start telling stories to you about how many IEP meetings and how many school meetings and how many meetings with psychiatrists I've had who just did not get it. They didn't understand I was doing all those things and it was not working. So I got tired of that and I created my own system and I trusted my mama gut and I did what was going to work to bring healing to my child. And that's what I'm sharing with you today. So we're going to learn the 5 keys to ending explosive episodes and meltdowns so that you can stop them safely. First of all, you can't change anything until you learn how to create a good, solid safety plan. We're going to talk about that. Number 2, you're going to learn how to prevent them effectively. So first you got to learn how to, when they're happening, because they happen, you got to learn how to stop them in a way that's going to create the least amount of destruction and disconnection. Then once you stop them, then you're going to learn how to, between each meltdown, put into place a system that's going to prevent them. And then over time, as you continue to put that into place, that prevention, over time, you're going to see them reduce and reduce and reduce and reduce. And then eventually you will not see them at all anymore. And I'm telling you that this is what has happened for my son, for the other parents that I work with, for all the people in my Heartstrong Academy that have been teaching for the last, I started the company in 2014, and we've grown since then. We work with parents and teachers now. We do a certification program, we do a lot of different things, but every family that I have worked with, every teacher that I've worked with has seen growth and improvement in the children that they work with or that are in their home. Every single one. I've not had one person complain that this didn't work for their child. And we've had some rough kids, really rough kids. One kid she kept stealing her mom's credit cards and running up bills on the credit cards. And I don't know, we've had a lot of different behaviors. So this works. It really does. I can promise you that. Okay. All right. So let me quickly tell you about my family. This is my son, Hero. He was adopted at age 10 from Guatemala. We had a 4-year adoption process. It was a nightmare. He's the only deaf child at his orphanage. He had lots of neglect and abuse, and he didn't have a language. So it was tough. He came to me when he was 10 after 4 years. And his behaviors were very explosive, very aggressive. And I always tell people, it's kind of like if you've seen those movies about Helen Keller, or you've read the books about Helen Keller before she met Annie Sullivan, right? And then even after she first met Annie Sullivan, Helen Keller was not an easy child to live with for a while because she had no way to communicate her needs effectively. So this is how my son was. He was very physical because he didn't have a fully developed language. So we had tons of altercations. And even though he loved me and I loved him, like we had a pretty good relationship, but he was just so aggressive. I did everything. People told me to do all these different things and I just was exhausted. We had 12 hospitalizations total. He would go to inpatient and stay for about 3 to 8 days. Medications usually caused increased aggression. I have a lot of opinions about different kinds of medications. Again, I won't go into all that today because we just don't have the time. Anyway, I was fed up. I'm like, all these people are giving me horrible advice. I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to find a solution because I'm not willing to give up on this child. And some of you are like that. That's why you're here, right? If you're here, it means that you are looking for solutions. You're tired of hearing things that you try and then they don't work. And then you feel like a horrible parent or a horrible teacher because it's not working. What's wrong with me? Why can't I get my child to do what I'm asking them to do, right? So that's what I did. I researched and I looked outside of the field of parenting as well, because, I'm also a teacher. So as a teacher, I'm also a researcher. So I looked at a bunch of different things out there. I was looking at, some of the literature about PTSD and veterans who come back from war and kind of how do they reintegrate into society when they have really severe PTSD, looking at some of that, looking at positive psychology literature, looking at growth and healing, looking at trauma and body somatics and how that affects trauma. So looking at a lot of different things, I came up with a system that worked for us. And then when I started sharing it with other people, they were like, oh, this works for us too. So that's how Heartstrong was born. And it's all about relationship and optimism. Heartstrong is about relationship and optimism, not airy, pie in the sky optimism, but that whole focus that we talked about at the beginning, focusing on growth and healing and not perfection, and looking at those little baby steps and really shining a spotlight on those, because then the child sees that you're seeing the growth and then they want more of it because they see that that's where the attention is going, because kids do what you pay attention to, right? They need that, they crave that. So when you're paying attention to the growth, then they start wanting to grow more, and then they get on board, and then you're not doing that tug of war anymore. You're actually on the same team. And that's how this approach works. So we put the parents or the teachers and the child on the same team so that you're working together to overcome the behaviors. It's not an us and them kind of a thing. And it's all about radical acceptance and unconditional positive regard, or unconditional love if you're a parent, no matter what. Relationship is the foundation. And I'm talking no matter what. Like, my kid almost suffocated me once. Like, my life was in danger. But the next day, we're back to relationship, because I knew that it was all about his amygdala and his body and his nervous system and how that all responds. It wasn't an I won't behave. It was I can't behave. We'll talk about that in a minute too. So as I mentioned, I started sharing this and blogging and talking to other parents, and I started informal coaching, and then I did formal parent coaching. And I do also have a coaching license now as well. And I realized this would be valuable to teachers, because as a former teacher, this is stuff I didn't learn. And so now I'm training teachers, and I'm training teachers to train other teachers, because there's only one of me, and I'm trying to get more and more people, the system, into the hands of as many people as possible. So that's a completely different, it's not what we're talking about today, but if that's something if you would like to learn how to teach this information, you can reach out to me as well, and I can tell you about that. So we do have a train the trainer program as well. And you'll notice all my emails are wingbuilder. So wingbuilder is the name of the company, and Heartstrong International is the name of the, it's kind of what we do business as, because that's the name of our programs, and it just makes more sense so that people can recognize who we are. So again, I mentioned there are two programs that we have at Heartstrong. We have the Heartstrong Academy, which some of you may want to jump into and join, and I'll tell you how to do that if that's something you'd like. And we also have professional certification programs for parent coaches and educational trainers. So for those of you who want to work with parents, or you want to work with teachers, I know we have a few social workers, and we have some parents who are very advanced and some teachers who are very advanced in this who want to jump into that too. But we're not going to talk about that now. So let's talk about the spiraling stages of growth. So this is the meat and potatoes of the Heartstrong model. This is what we base everything on. Everything that I've drawn from out there and all the research that I've done, this is kind of an encapsulation. This is a model or a framework that everything fits into. Okay, some of this is based on, if those of you who know about trauma-informed teaching and parenting, you'll know Bruce Perry's work, Mona Delahook, Ross Green. There's tons of folks that I follow who are doing evidence-based, research-based practices, and all of those fit into this model really nicely. So it starts out here when we're in crisis. We have to start with compassion. It's all on the foundation of compassion. And first of all, compassion for ourselves, because we beat ourselves up as parents and teachers. We feel like we're worthless because we can't get our child to do what we've asked them to do. So it starts with self-compassion, extend that compassion to the child, and then we get out of crisis and we move up to calm. And this is all nervous system regulation, body-brain regulation. Then stage 2 is relationships. So we go from conflict to connection, from control to communication. Then we move up to the next stage, with reciprocity, collaboration, and confidence. And then the goal is to get up to resilience. That's the highest stage, which is courage and creativity. That's when you become the person as a parent or teacher, and as a child, you're becoming the person that you really want to be. You're joyful, you're in your purpose, you're doing what you were sent here to do. And you're just living your life the way you want to live it, with lots of joy and lots of connection and lots of love, right? That's what we want as family members. That's what we want as teachers. We want it to be exciting to go to work, right? You don't want to always be in conflict with your students or even with your administrators or your colleagues, right? So that's the model. We go into tons of detail about every single stage and step in the Heartstrong Academy. But the idea is progress, not perfection. We don't punish kids for not being perfect. We don't punish parents and teachers for not being perfect. We get back on the horse, we try again, we keep going, we keep focusing on the growth. Just like if you're on a diet, you're trying to lose weight, you don't stop the diet every time you eat a cookie. Like, okay, so I ate a cookie today, that's fine. I'm going to get back on the horse. I'm going to do better tomorrow, right? It's always about focusing on the growth, focusing on the progress. So let's talk about what explosive episodes are, and then we'll talk about how to stop them today. We're running a little later than I hoped today. Today's a little longer, tomorrow probably be shorter, but as I said, I can talk and talk and talk. So I will try to wrap this up soon. So explosive episodes are just another word for dysregulation. So the regulation of the body and the brain is when you're steady and you're calm and everything's happy, everything's good. When you're dysregulated, you're in a state of chaos. Right? So it's a dysregulated brain and body. It's a survival brain state. Doesn't matter what the diagnosis of the child is. They're anxious, they're worried, they're stressed out, and they go into fight, flight, or freeze. And there's a whole bunch of brain science behind this that I'm not going to go into today. This happens at stage 1 of the Heartstrong model. First, we need to go from crisis to compassion in step 1, and then go from chaos to calm. So for regulation to happen, to get back to that happy, calm state of mind and body, we have to start with compassion from the heart. That's why it's Heartstrong. It starts in your heart. It starts in that connection from the heart, not in your head, not about the rules, not about the punishments, not about all that. It starts in your heart. And then how do we do that though? How do we have that heart-to-heart connection between the adult and the child? If the family is in crisis, if you're in chaos, if there's dysregulation, if there's, explosive episodes, what do we do? So it says today's training is going to be 20 minutes. We're going to fly through this, but I have more details that I can share with you later. So we're going to talk about key 1, how to end the meltdown. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're going to talk about keys 2, 3, 4, and 5, how to prevent, reduce, and eliminate the meltdowns. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll talk about how you can learn more about this if that's something you'd like to learn. So key 1 is taming the trauma dragon. So the trauma dragon is that anxiety, that flipped lid, that amygdala firing, all of that stress response. What we need to do first is accept that explosive episodes in a child who's having a hard time like this, they're going to happen. They're just going to happen. And we need to kind of get up in the morning and say, okay, I'm just radically going to accept that this child's probably going to have a meltdown today because he had one yesterday or she had one last week. And I'm just ready for that. You just are ready for that. This is what's happening. This is the reality of what is going on right now, not forever, but right now. Understand that it's a trauma, a stress response to overwhelming anxiety. Doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. That's what's going on. Okay. Prepare for the meltdown with a safety plan and with your own adult self-care, because you can't be calm and compassionate and caring if you are exhausted and stressed out. Now, I am not going to preach self-care, self-care, self-care at you because that annoys me as a parent. I get tired of people telling me you need more self-care. I know that this is really hard to do when you have an explosive child. So I'm not saying that, I don't want you to have more guilt about that. I'm not going to give you more to worry about. The point is, you even just taking a deep breath sometime could be your self-care, right? Like little things like that, drinking a glass of water, trying to get a little bit of sleep. All those things are part of your self-care. And even if you can do just a little bit of that, it's better than nothing. Okay. But anyway, the point is when the meltdown happens, because they will happen, you just accept that so that you don't freak out every time it happens. You're like, oh, we're having a meltdown. Okay. No biggie. It's your mindset. You change your mindset. It's happening. This is what this child does. So we're going to schedule this in our day. We might have a 3-hour rage today. Oh, okay. We're having a 3-hour rage. Fine. And you drop everything and you have the 3-hour rage. And that's just part of the process. Okay. But it won't be that way forever. I promise. Okay. And when they happen, you focus on taming the trauma dragon, which means calming yourself and calming the child. So accept that they're going to happen, understand that they're a trauma response, prepare for them with a safety plan and adult self-care. That's happening all the time, hopefully. When they happen, focus on taming the trauma dragon. And the only objective when the child is in the meltdown, the only objective, this is the easy part of it's the most violent part of the model, but this is easy because you only have one thing to worry about. It's just to stay calm yourself and help the child get calm, get their nervous system to a state of calm regulation. That's all. You don't have to discuss anything. You don't have to talk about, you don't have to connect, then correct. I hate that, by the way. I know some of you follow some other systems that use that phrase. I can't stand that. We don't do that in this system. We just calm them. We just get calm. We have discussions later, and it's collaborative and it's problem solving in nature, but we don't do that at this stage. So this is the idea with Heartstrong. It's all about stages and steps, and you got to figure out where they are first, because we're not going to have a discussion. We're just going to get calm, and that's it. Okay. So it's not about getting them to comply with the rules. It's working with the child as a team to tame the fear and the chaos inside their brain and their body, as well as your own. And a lot of people say, but wait a minute, but what about the rules? But what about this? What about that? It's not fair to the other students. It's not fair to the other kids, blah, 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 blah. Yes, that's true, but you're not at that stage yet. We'll get there. It's just about right now in this situation, when you're melting down, you're not going to be at this stage forever, but you have to conquer the dragon together before you move up the stages of growth, which you will. Okay. It's not time to discuss anything. It's 100% about compassion and calm with a connected, caring adult. And if you say to yourself, okay, that sounds great, Sandy, but right now, I don't feel any compassion for this child. This child drives me crazy. I can't stand this child because they're so aggressive and violent towards me or towards their siblings or the pets or whatever. If that's the case, then we need to back up, and we need to get you better. We need to take care of you. We need to have compassion for you. You may need some time away from the child. You may need to go on a long weekend by yourself to get yourself calm and to take care of yourself. You've been depleted. If you're depleted and exhausted, you can't do this work. You can't do it. So we got to take care of you. And that's something that I do when I'm parent coaching. A lot of times we'll just take a time out from all of this and get the parent or the teacher, whatever the case may be, get them in a good state of mind so that they can dig down into that heart-strong compassion again, to go back into the ring and be on the same team as the child. Okay. We got to work on that in between meltdowns. And it's a process. There's days that I still I'll get very irritated by my son, and I now know how to I call it the rapid forgiveness cycle. And I can do that pretty quickly now, but it took some time for me to get there. But I hear you, and I understand how that feels. So I don't have any judgment for if you feel really, really disconnected right now, but we can work on that. I promise you. Okay. And it's about working with the child as a team to tame the fear and chaos in the child's brain and body, as well as your own. And it's like drowning. When a child if a person was drowning and you swam out to help them and they started clawing at you or grabbing at your hair or something, you wouldn't stop them and say, now make a good choice. Use your words. You need to, that's not nice. You're not respecting me. You wouldn't have that conversation if someone was drowning. You would just get them out of the water and get them to safety and help them calm down and help them breathe. In the same way, when a child is in a meltdown, it's not the time to discuss your rules. It's not the time to tell them about making good choices. All those things, it's not the time. Don't even go there. Just get them calm and get yourself calm. Okay. So calm yourself first. Use co-regulation, which we go into a whole lot of detail on in the Heartstrong Academy. A nervous system, use the 5 senses, use breathing and use slow motion. Don't do anything too fast. It's going to be scary. Proximity, facial expressions, movements, all of those things need to be really non-threatening. Again, that's something because of the time, I can't go into all the detail how to do that. But in stage 1, you're not going to restrain the child. Please don't restrain children. You're not going to punish them. You're not going to reward them. None of that. Just be with the child in a calm state of mind, body, and heart. Tomorrow, we're going to do keys 2, and that should say 3. It says keys 2 and 2, but it's keys 2 and 3. Once you've practiced this, once you've learned how to tame that trauma dragon over and over, and sometimes it takes 20, 30, or 100 times, depends on the child, depends on the parent or the teacher, the child will start to trust you because they know you're not going to give them a lecture when they're drowning, right? You got to stop giving kids lectures when they're drowning. For dangerous behavior, you're going to need a rock solid safety plan. I'm going to teach you how to do that. We really go into a lot of detail in the Heartstrong Academy. And tomorrow we're going to talk about what to do in between the meltdowns to help reduce them and promote growth and healing in your classroom. Okay, so I want you to type any questions that you have in the chat. Here's my email as well. So if some of you want to reach out to me, you need more information, you missed part of this, or you need the recordings or whatever, that's my email. You're welcome to share that with anybody else that you think might be interested in this. I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute and see what questions you have. And you're welcome to either type them in the chat. So I'll look at the chat questions first. And then if anybody has like a little bit of a more complicated question that you want to ask me, I'll open it up to the, we have a small enough group here today. A lot of people signed up, but some people have other commitments. So yeah, so we'll let you ask me in person if you want to do that. So pardon me, let me take a sip of my coffee. I get very excited about this because I know it really works, and I know people get worried when they hear about the trauma dragon. They're like, but I need to do what? How are we going to get them to get better? And that's the next stage. Okay, so MK says if the child is harming themselves or a sibling, you don't restrain them. No, that means that you don't have a solid safety plan. So what I work on with parents and teachers, we need a strong safety plan so that those children are not together ever without your, supervision, or there's a quick way to get the other child to safety, or you have another adult present, or that child has to be with you at all times. Like there's lots, it just depends on the situation. I know that sounds really complicated, and how in the world are you going to do that if you have 6 kids or whatever? It's tough, but even with some really big families, I've been able to come up with a plan, help the parent kind of walk through what's the plan going to be when the child has meltdowns, because this is a child we've already identified. They're in stage 1, maybe step 1 or step 2. If a child's in stage 1, step 1 or step 2, they have no business being in a room by themselves with a sibling. That's not safe. So we got to figure out a safety plan, but it's not a consequence. So it's a different way of looking at it. If a child's not safe on a computer, for example, if they're looking at sites that are not unsafe, or they're charging on your credit card and that's not safe, then they can't be on the computer by themselves. That's a safety plan, right? So you put in really strong limits and strong boundaries around anything that for that child is going to be an issue. But I think when you get to the point of restraining, that means that there's a weak safety plan, or maybe there's a good safety plan, but there's part of the safety plan you haven't thought through yet. And we just need to think that through. And like I said, I've been in situations where my life was in danger. My son was attacking me physically, almost smothered me once. So I had a really strong safety plan about what to do when I saw him escalating, and I was able to identify, and this is all what we go through. And we have a thing called the family flight plan. And it's all about identifying what happens just before you get to that crisis, like level 9, level 10, 911 level. We got to identify it before we get to that so that we're going to implement the safety plan really quickly to prevent the situation where you're going to have to restrain. Because my son was 10. I tried to restrain him, I think, a total of 2 times. It was bad. I don't have the upper body strength to do a restraint. It was not safe for him. It was not safe for me. It created more danger than it did create safety. And it also destroyed the relationship, because now I'm on that other side of the rope. We're doing tug of war. I'm trying to get him to comply. I'm trying to get him off. So we gotta get them before they get to that point. So we have to have a better, stronger safety plan. If this is happening, if they're attacking other siblings on a daily basis and you can't supervise them, then they may need short-term inpatient treatment, or they may need long-term residential treatment. But my goal is to get to you to before that gets to that point, right? Like there's times when for safety reasons, kids can't be in the same house. There are times, but 99% of the time, that's not the case if we implement this system. But if you've been restraining for a long time, it's going to take a while to undo the damage, the relationship damage that has done. I hope that answers the question. Okay, Catherine says, if the child's causing the parent bodily harm, we aren't supposed to restrain them. No. And my son used to cause me bodily harm and I did not restrain him. I tried a few times, it did not work. I realized that was not the best solution. He was 10, so he's already pretty big. But now, like I knew at age 10, 11, 12, he was going to be stronger than me eventually anyway. So that was not a good strategy. It's just not a good strategy. It destroys the relationship and it's unsafe. If you're at the point where, if you're at a 911 level, you need to have a safety plan that includes backup systems and support systems. And what I do is I walk families through who that might be. So I'm a single mom, so I did not have a spouse that I could call to come and help me. Okay. So I had family members, I had neighbors, I had the police came a few times, more than a few times. I don't recommend that, especially since I have a child of color who was adopted. And so there's all kinds of issues with that too, which, we won't go into right now, but it's not the best solution to call the police, but unfortunately, that's the only publicly paid person you can call at this point in many cities. Some cities I'm very excited. A lot of cities now are implementing new programs where they'll send a social worker or a team of social workers that are trained in crisis de-escalation rather than sending the police into a situation like that. So I'm hoping that more and more places will have other options that are mental health crisis rather than, a criminal act. Because what happens is when you call police, they're looking for a criminal and they're coming in your house and they're, drawing their guns sometimes, and it can get very, very scary. So we don't want to get to that point, hopefully, but I've been in that situation. So I think I'm uniquely qualified to train in this area because I feel like we had one of the most dangerous situations of all, and we don't have that anymore. So there's a way to change it. The change is possible. It's not overnight, especially if you've been restraining. You gotta undo all that damage. But you're going to need a backup system. There's 4 essentials we're going to talk about later. That's your safety plan, your support plan, your strategies, and then your self-care plan. All that has to be really solid or the system falls apart. Okay. Yes, Linder says, I'm excited because you speak the truth. Hard with 3 trauma kids and now trauma grandson in my care, and aunt, uncle get triggered by behavior. Yes. And this is a big part of it because we as adults, it's very, very hard to stay calm and connected with a child who's raging and violent. It's very hard. It's almost, it takes superhuman strength to be able to do it. I just tell my parents, they're Olympic level parents. It's hard. It's very hard. So I have no judgment for people who aren't perfect at this yet. I'm not perfect at this. I don't think any of us are perfect at this. But I know that this is really the only thing that works. It's the only thing that works if you want to change things, if you want to just keep going on the way you've been going on, don't do this and just keep restraining the child and keep punishing them. And they're going to keep fighting back at you. And it's just going to be constant chaos forever and ever. But if you want to change a child's behavior, you got to change their heart, and you've got to change your heart. And that is an incredible personal transformation that we go through. I think it takes so much courage to really approach it this way, but the rewards are amazing. And you really need a team. You really need people around you that understand what you're dealing with. So that's why in all my programs, we have a lot of parent support and encouragement because it's tough. They're tough days. So yay. So how can you deal with unhappy parents? Yeah. It's hard when you're the parent or when somebody who's struggling. It's hard. We gotta build up the parent. We gotta give that parent some compassion. We gotta give them some support too. And this is not about curing a child, sending them to a therapist and having the therapist fix the child. It's a family dynamic. It's a relationship. And it's the same in the classroom. It's not about fixing the bad child in the classroom. It's a classroom. It's an environment that you create in your classroom that's very caring and very supportive of the nervous system. And so there's ways to do that. It's very complicated, but it's possible. Okay. All right. Wow. We went way over the time. I get excited. I apologize. I could talk for hours and hours. I don't want to keep you guys forever. Does anybody want to unmute themselves and open up your video and ask a question? Or do you have any other questions? Type in the chat for me. All right. All right. You guys have been awesome. I love your questions. I love that you're still here, even though I told you it was a half an hour and it's been an hour. And you're still here. So I'm so glad. I'm going to stop the recording now. Those of you who are listening to the recording, don't forget there's going to be 4 days. So this isn't the end. There's more coming. Okay. So thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you tomorrow.